Imagine being invited somewhere, not to be celebrated, not to be welcomed, but to be humiliated in front of hundreds of powerful people. That was what happened to Eunice. Eunice worked as a cleaner. She mopped floors, polished glass, emptied bins, and stayed invisible. Most people never looked at her. Some passed by her like she was just another shadow on the wall. To the wealthy elite who filled that building, she was practically furniture, just part of the scenery. So when the invitation arrived, it felt surreal, almost like a cruel joke. It was for the wedding of a billionaire and the most arrogant woman Eunice had ever encountered in her entire life. But what Eunice didn't know was that this invitation wasn't an honor. It was laced with venom. It wasn't a gesture of kindness. It was a trap designed to break her. But life has a strange way of flipping the script, because on that wedding day, the woman they expected to mock, the one they thought would crumble under their stares, walked in like royalty. What happened next, nobody in that room could have possibly imagined. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. Drop it in the comments. Now, let's dive into the story. The sound of designer heels echoed across the polished marble lobby. The floor gleamed so brightly it mirrored the massive crystal chandeliers hanging overhead. Luxury cars glided in and out of the building's private entrance in a constant parade of wealth. Inside that towering skyscraper, money wasn't just present, it was on full display. Executives rushed past in tailored suits, speaking into phones, clutching Italian leather briefcases, negotiating million-dollar deals. Everyone in that building looked like they belonged. Everyone except Eunice. She wore worn cleaning gloves and guided her cart quietly through the halls. Her gaze stayed low, but her spine remained perfectly straight. She was 42 years old. Her hands told the story of her life. Years of labor, loss, sacrifice, and quiet resilience. She knew every inch of that building, every stubborn stain, every fingerprint on the glass, every forgotten corner. And she knew something else, too. She knew secrets. Powerful people loved to talk when they believed no one important was listening. And Eunice always reminded herself, when people think you're invisible, you hear everything. But there was one person who made absolutely certain Eunice never forgot her place: Yvonne. Yvonne was the billionaire's wife. She was stunning, polished, dripping in wealth, and breathtakingly cruel. She moved through the building like she owned not just the property, but the people inside it. Her heels were always custom, her jewelry always flawless, her smile ice cold. Eunice had learned to disappear. Not physically, but in every other way that mattered. She moved through the building like a ghost, her presence so quiet that people forgot she was even human. She had become part of the scenery, blending into the wallpaper and abstract art that nobody really looked at anyway. Every morning started the same way. She arrived at 6 a.m. before most of the executives stumbled in with their overpriced coffee and important phone calls. She changed into her uniform in the basement locker room, a place that smelled like bleach and old regret. Then she pushed her cart to the top floors where the real money lived, where the air itself seemed more expensive. The marble floors on the executive level were her responsibility. They had to be spotless, perfect, reflective. Sometimes when she knelt down to scrub a stubborn mark, she caught her own reflection staring back at her. The woman in the marble looked tired, older than 42, worn down by years of bending, scrubbing, and swallowing her pride. But Eunice remembered a different reflection. Years ago, she used to see a woman in tailored suits, a woman who walked into boardrooms and commanded respect, a woman whose name opened doors instead of closing them. That woman ran the Adabio Foundation, one of the most respected charitable organizations in the country. That woman had power. Now,
Now she had a mop. The morning Yvonne decided to make Eunice her personal entertainment, everything changed. Eunice was wiping down the glass conference room walls when she heard the click of those unmistakable heels. Yvonne walked in with two of her friends, all of them dressed like they were attending a fashion show instead of visiting an office building. "Oh God, is that smell cleaning solution or poverty?" Yvonne said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Her friends laughed on cue, like trained performers. Eunice kept wiping. She had learned long ago that responding only made things worse. "You know, I think she's been wearing the same uniform for 3 years," Yvonne continued, circling Eunice like a predator examining prey. "Darling, doesn't your company provide you with fresh clothes, or do they just assume nobody looks at you anyway?" The words landed like slaps, but Eunice's hand never stopped moving across the glass, back and forth, steady, controlled. Yvonne stepped closer, so close that Eunice could smell her perfume, something that probably cost more than Eunice made in a month. "Look at me when I'm talking to you." Eunice finally turned. Their eyes met. For just a second, something flickered in Yvonne's expression, something almost like uncertainty, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by that cold, practiced smile. "Better," Yvonne said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "See, girls, even the help can learn manners." She examined her manicured nails, clearly bored now. "Anyway, I have a wedding to plan, a real wedding, the kind of event people like you only see in magazines." She turned to leave, then paused dramatically. "Actually, you know what? This is going to be fun." Eunice watched her walk away, those designer heels clicking against the marble like a countdown to something terrible. She didn't know it yet, but Yvonne had just made a decision that would cost her everything.
3 days later, Eunice was cleaning the executive lounge when she heard them. Laughter. The kind that came from people who had never known real struggle, never worried about anything more serious than which vacation home to visit next. Yvonne swept in with her usual entourage, 4 women who existed solely to validate whatever cruel thought crossed her mind. They dropped into the leather chairs like royalty, completely ignoring Eunice in the corner. "So the invitations are finally ready," Yvonne announced, pulling out her phone. 200 guests, the Grand Magnolia Estate. It's going to be absolutely perfect." "Only 200, one of the women gasped. "Darling, I had 300 at mine." Yvonne's smile turned sharp. "Quality over quantity, Jessica. I only want people who matter." She scrolled through her phone, her manicured nails tapping against the screen. "Although I am thinking about adding one more name to the list." The women leaned in, hungry for gossip. "Who?" Jessica asked. Yvonne's eyes slid toward Eunice. "What do you think about inviting the help?" The lounge went quiet, then erupted in shocked giggles. "You're joking! Oh my God, Yvonne, you wouldn't! Why on earth would you do that?" Yvonne stood, smoothing her dress. "Because it would be absolutely hilarious. Can you imagine a cleaning lady at the social event of the year?" She walked toward the window. "She'd be like a fish trying to survive in champagne." The women dissolved into laughter, but Patricia looked uncertain. "Wouldn't that be a little cruel?" Yvonne turned, mockingly innocent. "Cruel? I'm giving her an opportunity to see how the other half lives. Most people in her position would kill for this invitation." She paused. "Besides, it's not cruel if everyone's in on the joke." Eunice's hand tightened around the cleaning cloth, but she kept her movement steady. She had become an expert at pretending she couldn't hear, couldn't feel. "Oh, this is too good," Jessica squealed. "Are you really going to do it?"
Already decided, Yvonne said, pulling something from her purse. An envelope, thick and expensive, sealed with gold wax. I had this made special. I want her to feel like it's real. She walked over and placed the envelope on the counter. Eunice, isn't it? Eunice straightened slowly. Yes, ma'am. This is for you. Yvonne's smile was all teeth, no warmth. I'm getting married next month at the Grand Magnolia Estate, black tie event. I would be honored if you could attend. Behind her, the women barely contained their laughter, hands over mouths, shoulders shaking. Eunice looked at the envelope, then at Yvonne. Something felt wrong, poisonous, but Yvonne's face was a mask of false sincerity. I don't know what to say, Eunice managed. Say you'll come, Yvonne insisted, her voice sticky sweet. It would mean so much to me. The women behind her finally broke, their laughter spilling out like champagne from a shaken bottle. Eunice picked up the gold-sealed envelope with trembling fingers. Thank you, ma'am. Oh, don't thank me yet, Yvonne said, turning away. Wait until you see what I have planned. They left the lounge in a cloud of perfume and cruelty, their laughter echoing down the hallway. Eunice stood alone, holding the gold-sealed envelope like it was a bomb waiting to explode. Because deep down, in a place she tried to ignore, she knew exactly what this was.
The bus ride home felt longer than usual. Eunice sat by the window, clutching the gold-sealed envelope like evidence of a crime. Around her, people lived their ordinary lives. None of them knew she was carrying an invitation designed to destroy her. Her apartment was in a neighborhood the skyscraper people would never visit. No marble floors here, just cracked sidewalks, flickering streetlights, and buildings that had seen better decades. She climbed 3 flights because the elevator had been broken for 2 months. The door stuck, like always. Inside, the space was small but clean. 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, a living room that served every purpose. The furniture was old but cared for. Everything earned. She set her purse down, still holding the envelope. The silence pressed against her ears. No laughter now, just her and the truth she'd been avoiding. They wanted to humiliate her in front of hundreds of people at the social event of the year. The invitation felt heavier suddenly, like lead instead of paper. She sat at the table by the window, breaking the gold seal. The paper inside was thick, textured, expensive. You are cordially invited to the wedding of Yvonne Elizabeth Carmichael and Richard Alexander Morrison III. Eunice read the words 3 times, searching for some hint this was genuine. But she knew better. She had heard the laughter. She was the punchline to a joke only the wealthy would understand. The tears came without warning. One moment she was staring at the invitation, the next her vision blurred. She pressed her hand over her mouth, but the sound escaped, a sob, then another. How had she ended up here? The woman who once sat with governors and philanthropists, now someone rich people invited to parties just to laugh at. The Adebayo Foundation used to command respect. Her name used to mean something. Eunice folded forward, forehead touching the table, and let herself cry. Really cry. The kind she hadn't allowed in years, because there was always another floor to clean, another insult to swallow. The invitation sat beside her, mocking her with its golden elegance. She cried for the woman she used to be, for the dignity she'd lost, for every time she'd bitten her tongue while someone treated her like furniture, for her father, who had built the Adebayo Foundation from nothing and would be heartbroken to see his daughter scrubbing floors in a building where she once held meetings. The apartment grew darker as evening settled in, but Eunice didn't turn on the lights. She just sat there in the growing shadows, letting the weight of it all finally land. Tomorrow she would have to decide.
Throw the invitation away and pretend it never happened, or show up and give them exactly what they wanted, a cleaning lady drowning in a sea of designer gowns and old money. Either way, she would still be their joke. The thought made her cry harder.
When the tears stopped, Eunice sat in the darkness, listening to the building sounds. Water pipes groaning, a television through the wall, the ordinary symphony of ordinary lives. But she couldn't be ordinary anymore, not tonight. She walked to her bedroom closet. In the back corner, behind old coats, sat a wooden chest, mahogany, polished once but now dulled by years of neglect. Her father had given it to her on her 30th birthday. Eunice pulled it out and carried it to the living room, kneeling beside it. The brass latch clicked open, and suddenly she was staring at a life she'd spent 5 years trying to forget. Photographs sat on top. Eunice, at 28, standing in front of the Autobio Foundation headquarters on opening day, her father beside her, both grinning. Eunice, at 35, shaking hands with the governor at a charity gala, wearing a midnight blue gown. Eunice, at 37, cutting the ribbon at a new community center, surrounded by grateful families. She looked powerful in those photos, confident, like someone who belonged in rooms where decisions were made. Beneath the photographs were newspaper clippings. Autobio Foundation raises $2.3 million. Eunice Autobio named Philanthropist of the Year. Her father's face appeared in several clippings. Maxwell Autobio, a self-made man who built a fortune in real estate and spent his last decade giving it away. He'd started the foundation with one belief: people deserved second chances. Then he died, heart attack at 62, and Eunice, barely 37, took over. For 3 years she ran it the way he would have wanted, expanding programs, helping families, building partnerships. She'd been exceptional, until Marcus Bellamy entered the picture. Eunice's hands trembled as she pulled out a business card. Marcus Bellamy, Chief Financial Officer. He'd come highly recommended, with credentials and a smile that made people trust him. She'd trusted him. He'd destroyed her. Embezzlement, fraud, money disappearing while Marcus created fake documents showing Eunice had approved everything. By the time the board discovered the truth, millions were gone, and all evidence pointed at her. Marcus vanished. The police never found him, but the damage was done. The board removed her. The media ran stories. Foundation director under investigation. Her father's life work reduced to headlines. She'd fought, hired lawyers, but the legal battle drained her money, and the best outcome was no criminal charges, just her reputation destroyed, her career finished. She'd lost everything: the apartment, the car, the designer clothes, the social circle that evaporated the moment scandal touched her name. Cleaning floors in a building where she once held meetings. Eunice closed her eyes, her hand resting on the stack of memories. She'd hidden from her past for so long, convinced that keeping her head down and staying invisible would somehow protect what little dignity she had left. But Yvonne's invitation had shattered that illusion. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. Maybe it was time to remind people exactly who Eunice Autobio used to be. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to show them who she still was. Eunice stared at her phone for 20 minutes before opening her contacts. The name sat there like a ghost: Diana Rousseau. They'd met 12 years ago at a fundraiser. Diana had been a rising fashion designer, creating gowns for socialites. She'd also donated her time to the Autobio Foundation, designing affordable work attire for women re-entering the workforce. They'd become friends, real friends, the kind who grabbed coffee on Tuesdays and laughed until their sides hurt. Then the scandal hit, and Eunice withdrew from everyone, stopped answering calls. She'd convinced herself she was protecting people from her toxicity, but really, she'd been protecting herself from their pity. Diana had tried to reach out for months, left voicemails, sent messages. Eventually, even she stopped. That was 4 years ago. Eunice's finger hovered over Diana's name. What if she'd changed her number? What if she didn't want to help? But then Eunice thought about Yvonne's cold smile, about the gold-sealed invitation designed to humiliate her. She pressed call. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. "This is Diana." The voice was exactly the same, warm, confident. "Diana, it's—" Eunice's voice cracked. "It's Eunice." Silence. Not cold rejection, but stunned processing. "Eunice?" Diana's voice softened. "Eunice Adabio?" "Yes." "Oh my God, I can't believe it's you. Are you okay? I tried calling you so many times." "I know. I'm sorry. I wasn't ready." "Are you ready now?" The question hung between them, heavy with years of missed conversations. "I need help," Eunice said, "and I know I have no right to ask, but you're the only person who might understand." "Tell me what you need." No guilt trip, no lecture, just Diana. Eunice told her everything: the cleaning job, Yvonne, the invitation that was really an ambush, needing to walk into that wedding not as a victim, but as someone they would remember. When she finished, Diana was quiet for a moment. "So you want to show up at this woman's wedding and remind everyone who you really are?" "Yes." "In front of her entire social circle?" "Yes." "At the Grand Magnolia Estate?" "Yes." Diana laughed with genuine delight. "Oh, this is going to be perfect. When is it?" 3 weeks. "Okay, you're coming to my studio tomorrow evening, 6 o'clock. Don't be late." "Diana, I can't afford. Did I ask about money?" Diana's voice was firm but gentle. "You disappeared for 4 years. You don't get to disappear again, not now." She paused. "Besides, you think I've forgotten what you did for me when I was nobody and you gave me a platform?" Eunice felt tears threatening again, but this time they were different. Not tears of defeat, but something closer to hope. "I'll be there," she whispered. "Good. And Eunice?" "Yes?" "Whatever she's expecting you to show up in, we're going to do the opposite. This woman wants a janitor, we're giving her a queen." After they hung up, Eunice sat in the quiet, phone still warm in her hand. For the first time in 5 years, she felt something she'd almost forgotten. Power. Not from money or status, but from deciding you were done being invisible. From standing up even when your knees were shaking. From remembering you were Eunice Adabio, and that name still meant something. She was about to make them remember. The Grand Magnolia Estate looked like a fairy tale. White columns rose 3 stories high, wrapped in flowers and golden lights. Luxury cars lined the driveway, valets rushing to open doors for guests in designer gowns and tuxedos. Eunice sat in the town car Diana had sent, watching through tinted windows. Her heart hammered. Every instinct screamed to turn around, go back to her small apartment where she was safe, invisible. But then she remembered Yvonne's cold smile, the laughter, the invitation meant to destroy her. And she remembered who she used to be. "We're here, ma'am," the driver said. Eunice opened the door. The moment her foot touched the red carpet, something shifted. Conversations paused. Heads turned. Eyes widened. She stood, giving them time to see. The gown Diana created was a masterpiece. Silver metallic fabric that caught every light, fitted perfectly, making her look powerful and elegant. The deep blue wrap draped across her shoulders like royalty. Her hair framed her face in soft waves. Diamond earrings caught the light with every movement.
But it wasn't just the gown. It was how she carried herself. Head high, shoulders back, eyes calm. The posture of someone who belonged, who commanded respect simply by existing. She was Eunice Adebayo, and she had arrived. The murmurs started immediately, rippling through the crowd. Who is that? Is she a celebrity? That dress must have cost a fortune. Eunice walked forward, heels clicking against marble. The massive doors revealed a ballroom like a palace. Crystal chandeliers hung from painted ceilings. White roses covered every surface. A string quartet played while waiters circulated with champagne. In the center, surrounded by friends, stood Yvonne. She was beautiful. Her wedding gown was worth more than a car, all white silk and beading. Then she saw Eunice. The laughter died in her throat. Her face went pale, then red. Her mouth opened like she couldn't process what she was seeing. The friends around her noticed and turned. One by one they fell silent. The shock spread through the room, guests nudging each other, whispering urgently. Eunice kept walking, moving through the crowd with grace. She had attended 1,000 events like this, had shaken hands with governors, had given speeches that moved people to tears. She hadn't forgotten how to be that woman. She just stopped believing she was allowed to be. Tonight she was reclaiming what was hers. A waiter appeared with champagne. She took a glass, her hand steady, and raised it slightly in Yvonne's direction. Not a toast, just an acknowledgement. I'm here. I'm not afraid. And I'm not the joke you thought I'd be. Yvonne's face twisted through confusion, anger, fear, settling on panic. She leaned toward a bridesmaid, whispering frantically, eyes never leaving Eunice. The room had gone almost completely silent now. Even the string quartet seemed to be playing softer, as if they sensed something monumental was happening. Eunice took a sip of champagne and smiled. Let the show begin.
Yvonne recovered quickly. The panic transformed into something harder. She whispered to her husband, then walked toward Eunice. The crowd parted, everyone sensing the collision ahead. "Eunice," Yvonne said loudly, her voice carrying. Her smile was bright and fake. "What a surprise! I'm so glad you could make it." Every word dripped with condescension, but Eunice heard the fear beneath it. Yvonne was terrified, scrambling to regain control. "Thank you for the invitation," Eunice replied calmly. "It was thoughtful." The subtext hung between them. Both women knew what that invitation was meant to accomplish, and both knew it had backfired. Yvonne's smile tightened. "I have to say I'm impressed. That's quite a dress for someone in your position." A few people gasped. This was it. The public humiliation, the reminder that Eunice was just a cleaning lady who didn't belong. But Eunice didn't flinch. "My position?" Eunice tilted her head. "You mean as former director of the Adebayo Foundation, or my current role, where I observe people when they think no one important is watching?" The gasps were louder. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Adebayo Foundation? That Adebayo? Yvonne's face went white. "That's not—" "Just like you didn't mean for me to overhear you laughing about the cleaning lady you'd invited. Just like you didn't mean for this to be entertainment at my expense." The ballroom went silent. Even the string quartet stopped. Every eye was fixed on them. Yvonne's husband stepped forward, confused and angry. "What is she talking about?" "Nothing. She's confused. Where you humiliate people who work for a living, where you treat human beings like furniture, where you use your husband's money to feel superior." She turned to the crowd. "I spent 5 years cleaning floors in that building, 5 years being invisible, and I learned something important about wealth and character." She paused. "Money can buy designer dresses, gold-sealed invitations, even a wedding here."
Her eyes returned to Yvonne. But money can't buy class, it can't buy kindness, and it can't buy the right to treat people as less than human. Someone started clapping, then another. Within seconds, applause filled the ballroom. Yvonne's face cycled through rage, humiliation, desperation. "You have no right. This is my wedding. You're nothing but a what? A janitor?" Eunice asked softly. "Yes, and I'm not ashamed of honest work." She stepped closer. "But you should be ashamed. Tonight, in front of everyone you wanted to impress, you've shown them who you really are." Eunice turned toward the exit. "Wait," a voice called. She stopped. An older woman in an emerald gown stepped forward. She looked familiar. "Victoria Ashford," the woman said, extending her hand. "I served on the board of the Adebayo Foundation under your father's leadership, and then yours." The room erupted in whispers. Victoria Ashford, one of the most prominent philanthropists in the city, old money, real influence. And she was shaking Eunice's hand in front of everyone.
Victoria Ashford's handshake was firm, purposeful. She held Eunice's hand longer than necessary, making sure everyone understood this wasn't just politeness. This was a statement. "Eunice Adebayo," Victoria said loudly, "I haven't seen you in far too long. When you disappeared after that business with Marcus Bellamy, many of us tried to reach you." The whispers intensified. People pulled out phones. Others leaned toward companions, piecing together what was happening. "Marcus Bellamy," someone murmured. "Wasn't he the one who embezzled millions and framed the director?" Victoria turned to the crowd. "For those who don't know, Eunice ran the Adebayo Foundation after her father passed. Under her leadership, we expanded our scholarship program, built 3 community centers, and helped over 2,000 families." She paused. "Until her CFO betrayed her and destroyed everything she'd built." "The investigation cleared her completely," an older man added, "but the damage was done." Victoria nodded. The foundation lost funding, Eunice lost her reputation, and the city lost one of its most dedicated philanthropists. She turned to Yvonne, who stood frozen, ashen. "Which makes me wonder, Mrs. Morrison, why you invited Miss Adebayo if you didn't know who she was." The question hung like a blade. Yvonne's mouth opened and closed. We work in the same building. I thought—" "In what capacity?" Silence. Yvonne looked desperately at her husband, her bridesmaids, anyone, but no one moved. "She cleans?" Yvonne whispered. "Louder, please," Victoria said. "She works as a cleaner. I was trying to be charitable." "You thought it would be amusing," a woman in sapphire interrupted, stepping forward. "I was in the executive lounge last week when you and your friends were laughing about inviting the help to your wedding as entertainment." Yvonne went crimson. "That's not—" "I heard you too," a man called out. "You said you wanted to watch her squirm like a fish out of water." More voices joined in. Her treatment of staff, her constant demands, her habit of speaking about workers as beneath notice. Victoria held up her hand. The crowd quieted. "Let me understand this. You invited a woman who lost everything, her career, her reputation, her father's legacy, to your wedding, not as kindness, but as amusement?" Her voice was ice. "Without knowing she is Eunice Adebayo, who has done more genuine good in this city than most of us will accomplish in our lives." Yvonne's husband stepped back, his expression shifting to disgust. Several guests did the same, creating physical distance that spoke louder than words. "This is ridiculous," Yvonne tried, voice shrill. "She's just a janitor." "Just a janitor?" Victoria's voice cut like a whip. "Some of the finest people I know work with their hands.
What defines a person isn't their job, it's their character. She turned to Eunice, her expression softening. And this woman has more character than you've shown in your entire wedding. The crowd erupted in applause. Several people moved toward Eunice, introducing themselves, apologizing for not recognizing her sooner. Yvonne stood alone near the altar, her perfect wedding crumbling. Her bridesmaids whispered, clearly wanting distance from the disaster. Even her husband looked like he was reconsidering everything. Victoria leaned closer to Eunice. "I think your work here is done. Walk out with your head high." Eunice nodded, unable to speak past the emotion in her throat. She'd come expecting humiliation. Instead, she was leaving victorious.
Yvonne didn't say another word. She gathered her gown and fled the ballroom, heels clicking frantically. Her bridesmaids hurried after her, whispers trailing behind. The doors slammed shut. Then the ballroom exhaled. Conversations resumed, but different now. Softer, more thoughtful. People weren't discussing Yvonne's humiliation. They were talking about Eunice, about the Adebayo Foundation, about what had been lost and what might be rebuilt. Yvonne's husband stood alone near the altar, his expression caught between shock and shame. He caught Eunice's eye briefly, then looked away. Within minutes, he too disappeared through a side door, leaving the reception without either bride or groom. Victoria guided Eunice to a quiet corner. "Are you all right?" Eunice took a shaky breath. "I don't know what I am." "You're victorious, and you're free. You've been hiding for 5 years from people who never deserved your shame." She paused. "What are you going to do now?" Before Eunice could answer, a man in a gray suit approached. He was perhaps 60, with silver hair. "Ms. Adebayo, I'm Robert Chen on the board of the Marshall Foundation. I knew your father. I also knew what happened wasn't your fault." "Thank you," Eunice managed. "The Marshall Foundation needs someone to head our community development initiative, someone with experience, vision, and integrity." He smiled. "Someone exactly like you." Eunice stared, unable to process what she was hearing. "I'm serious. Your work was legendary. What Marcus Bellamy did was criminal, but it doesn't erase what you accomplished. We'd be honored to have you." Others approached. A woman who ran a scholarship program, a man who coordinated nonprofits, someone from the mayor's office, all offering apologies, opportunities, connections. The people who had disappeared when scandal touched her name were now lining up to help rebuild what she'd lost. Victoria watched with satisfaction. They haven't forgotten you, Eunice. They were just waiting for someone to remind them. As the evening wore on, Eunice exchanged phone numbers, scheduled meetings. The woman who arrived expecting humiliation was leaving with job offers and renewed purpose. Diana appeared, glowing with pride. She pulled Eunice into an embrace. "I knew you could do it." "I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have. I just gave you a dress. You gave them your strength, your dignity, your truth." Outside the Grand Magnolia estate, the night air was cool and clear. Eunice stood on the steps, looking up at the stars, still wearing the silver gown that had transformed her from invisible to unforgettable. She thought about her father, about the wooden chest, about 5 years of believing she deserved to be invisible. And she thought about tomorrow, about the calls she would make, the meetings she would attend, the work she would begin. The Adebayo Foundation might be gone, but its spirit wasn't. Victoria joined her. "There's talk of resurrecting the foundation, with proper oversight. Several donors are interested." Eunice turned to her, tears finally falling. "My father would have loved that."
Your father would be proud of you, not for what you accomplished before, but for what you did tonight. You could have stayed hidden. Instead, you stood up. The town car pulled up, but Eunice wasn't going back as the same person who'd left. She was going back as Eunice Adebayo, stronger, wiser, unbreakable. She'd worn a crown once, made of reputation and respect. Tonight, she'd reclaimed it, and this time, no one could take it away.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the others we have on our channel. They are as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine, so do check it out. We love you.